Hello and welcome to Peace at Home Parenting. We are live again this Friday with Ruth Freeman, our founder, talking about our October challenge. Hi, Ruth.
Hi, Amy. I'm delighted to be here today. We actually had a great conversation this week about intensive versus laid back parenting. And I thought we should talk a little bit about it. Yeah, I was meeting with Erin Weintraub, another teacher, and the reason we bring this up, this Friday, these Friday events are really about the challenge of spending 15 minutes a day with your child, uninterrupted, fun, relaxed, not screen time 15 minutes. And several parents are experimenting with it. If you have any questions about it, please let us know. We're relating this to Mental Health Month because we know that the parent child connection is a very strong protective factor when it comes to mental health. Not that we can prevent everything, no matter how hard we try. Um, but the Surgeon General recently came out with an advisory. And the U.S. Surgeon General comes out with advisories for things like AIDS and cigarette smoking, for really serious things. He doesn't just improvise. And the Surgeon General said that parents are putting so much stress on themselves that we literally are having an issue about their mental health and well-being. And at the same time, we have a pediatric mental health crisis going on. Um, and he talked about intensive parenting, and I looked it up. And one of the definitions of intensive parenting is painstakingly and methodically cultivating children's talents, academics, and futures through everyday interactions and activities. And there's a lot of reasons this has emerged. One is that we have all this research from brain science about birth to 5, and parents feel like they have to constantly be stimulating those little brains because it's such an important developmental stage. But in fact, kids have to feel secure in order to learn. So if we're stressing ourselves out to help our kids develop, and and parents are afraid that children aren't going to achieve a middle class lifestyle without being exceptional, because there's all this chatter about the economy and competition, and there's a lot happening around us that's making parents nervous.
So, if you are an intensive parent right now, how do you step back? Like, this has just become the life that you're living, and probably a lot of your peers are also doing the same things, and it feels like you have to just keep going and keep up. How do you get out of it?
Yeah. And social media has made this, 100 times harder because parents are all posting their most ideal moment, and everybody thinks that's their life. um, so any kind of change that you make with children, you want to make very, very gradually. So if you're going to back up from some of this, you might want to think about, what are the activities I'm taking my child to? Which ones do they seem to really enjoy? And can we back up on some of them? So I have my family here today, so it's a little crazy. Um, so you want to do this gradually, and certainly I would do this with the kids, even with little kids. I would talk about, which things do you enjoy? Sometimes parents are trying to keep their kids up in everything. So, for example, if your child is, on grade for reading, but all the kids in the class are ahead of grade, you might feel like your child's not doing enough. So it's very important that kids learn to read. That's essential. Literacy is being able to translate written things and figure them out. But we just had a parent this week in that conversation who talked about her daughter who hated to read, but she loved to sing. And so she would read the words to the songs, and she would dance. And that coordination for her brain, reading and dancing and singing at the same time, is spectacular.
Yeah.
So that's a great way to help her child read. And one of the things we really encourage parents to do is to be curious about their child and really observe them rather than try to build them. It's the gardener versus the carpenter. Rather than trying to build the perfect child who can read very well, do math very well, be good in school, do sports, rather than doing that, see what lights your child up and build on that. And,
Mhm.
I often tell the story of my daughter who really still can't spell. Um, and she never spelled very well. And she was lucky to be in a Montessori school so that she loved math and they let her go at her pace in math. And they said, she's never going to be a great speller. We're going to work on it, but we're going to do more math with her because that's what she loves. And in fact, that became her career. But because she was a bright kid, if she was in a different kind of school, they may have expected her to get her spelling and her reading up to the level that her math was because she's smart. And it would have stolen time from basketball, which she loved, and math. And I,
Interestingly, I was similar in some ways. Like I was always a very slow reader. I didn't like reading, and I was very good at math, and I was in a more traditional school setting where I got grades that said I wasn't good at reading and writing, and like I developed this self concept that I'm bad at these things and I didn't read. Like, I wasn't a reader until I was older, until I was like, oh, I actually I don't have to finish this book by a certain time. I can actually just read because I want to read this book. But I was not really encouraged. So I think it's great that your daughter was in a setting where she could
and
read at her own pace.
and now you're a gifted writer.
Yeah.
Which I think is really what you're illustrating is that kids come to things at different times. Unfortunately, teachers are being pressed to do all these assessments and they're trying to somehow get kids to consistently arrive at certain places. And my daughter, when she graduated from 6th grade, her reading level was adult, but she came to it very slowly, just like you did. And she wasn't tested until we put her back in the public schools in 7th grade. And I, I think that being advocates for our kids and knowing our kids, nobody knows your kids like you do. And being advocates for them in school, being advocates for them in sports, and also letting kids do things they're not great at.
Mhm.
So, I often tell the story of Andrea being this little, skinny, strong kid, and she was doing gymnastics up until the time she was 8. And then she decided she wanted to play basketball. And she was teeny, but she loved basketball. And she was never going to be as talented at basketball as she was in gymnastics. She was just a natural in gymnastics. But it's been a source of enormous um, satisfaction and brain calming for her. I mean, playing basketball is like medicine for her. And I think that the main message around intensive parenting is tuning in to what your child is a natural at. And
Mhm.
yes, you want to do the reading and you want to help them get to grade level and you want to listen to the teacher, but at the same time, if they're passionate about art, do the reading, but let them paint and draw. My granddaughter just made a book, and she doesn't necessarily love reading, but there she is. But she's a great artist, and she made a whole book and wrote a whole story. And so, letting kids express themselves in the way that's natural for them is exactly what's helpful. I was talking about your Halloween monster book and how awesome it was.
What was it about?
It was about a Halloween monster that stole a kid, but it wasn't actually a Halloween monster.
What was that monster really?
It was just a man, a
And
boy.
it was a boy. And why did he become a monster? Because why?
Because he always liked watching monster movies and he liked being scared and scaring people. So he pretended to steal a kid, but and then the moms asked asked him to give the kid back, and then he told the mom that he's not a boy, and then they went trick or treating together. Then it was the next Halloween, and then it was Christmas, and then the end of the story.
And what Violet said in her story was that this boy was actually lonely, and that's why he pretended to be a
No,
monster. That's what was in the first book that you wrote,
well, first,
the book of the Halloween monster. But anyway, um, I um, I think that the challenge of tuning into kids and letting them
wait,
become.
celebration.
Yes, but I'm actually in a class that
I
I'm
mean,
teaching.
congratulations.
Okay, I'm in a class that I'm teaching, so I'm going to write it, and then you're going to go outside. Okay.
Teaching somebody that's already a grown up.
Well,
No,
actually,
that's too fancy.
This is real life, folks.
it's real life. Actually,
So
Amy
it's
is teaching you.
CONGRATUNATIONS. Okay, I can write all that in cursive.
Awesome. I was working on writing and reading and lots of things.
She's amazing. I haven't seen her since she was like 3.
There you
Like
go.
she's much taller now.
With many more opinions.
Yeah. So Ruth, do you want to talk a little bit about something I was thinking about as you were talking is how intensive parenting not only causes stress on kids to perform at a certain level, but I think it stems from these parents feeling stressed about their kids' futures. So relating back to our 15-minute challenge, how do you think this is helpful for both kids and parents?
Well, I just want to quote Dr. Murthy, the U.S. Surgeon General. He says, chasing unreasonable expectations has left many families feeling exhausted, burned out, and perpetually behind.
Mm-hmm.
And when we spend those 15 minutes a day, it's really about slowing down time. It could be outside and running around, but it's not productive. It's not learning. It's not teaching. It's not coaching, advising, or improving your child. It's literally just taking them in. And even when you just look into your child's eyes or anyone's eyes, you lower their cortisol and adrenaline, you increase their serotonin, you help them calm down. And stopping is extremely important. And in fact, there's some research that not having downtime for adults and kids, not having spacious, unproductive, unplanned time, is associated with anxiety. So I think this connection, this 15-minute connection, brings you back to center, calms you down. It can be a mindful time where you're noticing. Mindfulness is simply tuning into your senses. So it's noticing what you see, noticing what you smell, noticing what you hear, noticing what you feel. And that's being mindful for those 15 minutes while you're playing Uno or checkers or whatever.
Yeah.
I think could be an incredible gift to parents and kids at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that parents who lean towards intensive parenting probably think like, actually, I'm spending a lot of time with my kids, and I think that taking on this challenge, whether you've started it already or you want to start it right now, it's fine. But I think it will show parents the difference between this really meaningful, intentional time together and like rushing around trying to get them fed between practices and activities. And like this 15 minutes we're asking people to do is much different from the 15 minutes you're spending in the car where like you're both stressed about what's coming
Getting
next.
somewhere. But and it's also not about teaching.
Yeah.
One of the things about intensive parenting is that one of the things that Dr. Murthy said is that parents blame themselves when they fear that they're not going to measure up. And many say that they believe their child's success or failure reflects on them and they feel judged about it. So if I'm in this high-end school and my kid's reading isn't at the level of the other kids, I feel like I failed. When in fact it could be a lot of different factors. And following our kids, I think, is more important than leading them too much. Aaron talked about the lighthouse parenting, where you just show them where the rocks are, but you let them experience the waves. And it was just a great metaphor for a more relaxed but contactful kind of parenting. And I hope that, we often say our kids are never much less stressed than we are because of mirror neurons. So I hope parents can really just give themselves permission to not have to achieve so much, not be so on purpose, and let themselves off the hook. And I think kids will be more relaxed as a result.
Thank you so much, Ruth. We're just about at our 15 minutes, so we're going to go, but I want to remind everyone that we'll be live again next Friday for 15 minutes at 12 o'clock. And then the following week, we will be on a Zoom call so that anyone who has engaged in this 15-minute challenge, whether you started it a week before this meeting or a month before, you can join us that day and share some of your successes, and we'll talk live on Zoom. And what else? Oh, we were going to talk a little about the holidays this week. We'll talk about that next week. And yeah.
And I want to remind you all that you can always get in touch with me or Amy or any of our Peace at Home teachers at solutions@peaceathomeparenting.com. You'll contact one of our parent guides. They'll direct you to the just right resources. We'd love to hear from you. And again, that email is solutions@peaceathomeparenting.com. Amy, thanks for putting this together.
Thank you, Ruth. I will talk to you soon.